Welcome back to SciTech Intermountain Siteworks training videos. In this video today, I want to talk about how to move a base station to a different spot after a calibration has been done. What I've set up out here is a situation where I've got the base station set up right here on this pole. We went ahead and did a site calibration for the site out here off of control points. So the calibration's done. But we have a lot of situations where all of a sudden your base needs to be moved. People either have a base pole that gets bent to where the base pole isn't usable anymore, or a scenario where, let's say this concrete barrier right here needed to be moved or it was just in the wrong spot. So I want to teach you two different ways to do this here. But what you need to remember is if you're going to measure in a brand new base pole, while this one is still good, you need to plant the new pole first. Like I've done right here, I've got another pole down, moved to a different area. You need to actually measure in that new spot while the base is still in a good spot before you take it down. We have a lot of customers that tear the base pole down and say, hey, I need to move the base pole. Well, yeah, I know if you only have one base pole, you want to keep using that one, but we need to measure it first off of the existing one. The other situation that we have that I wanted to teach you is, let's say this was your base pole, the base is running there, someone bumps your pole. So that pole is no longer good. The calibration has moved basically. Your job site has shifted either up or down or side to side. In that situation, you have to go back to a known control point like this. If it was either a hub or a pin in the asphalt, whatever it is, and you have to set the base up on a tripod like this, or whatever you may have. You would have to put the base or that tripod on that control point and then put the base on it and then use your data collector to tell the base that it's on that control point, and then you can measure the new one. So what I'm going to do right now is just show you that my base is running and I've got my rover here set up on a control point. So what I'm going to do is stake this control point right here, this CP102. I'm going to stake that point first and show you that the job site, if I'm centered up over this control point, is good. I've got a fill of 200ths, maybe 300ths. That's just the fluctuation in the day. And my bullseye right there is perfectly on. So I know that my base is still currently good to the calibration and has not moved. So what we're going to do to measure in the new pole is I'm going to take my rover head off. I'm going to take it and the quick release. And I'm going to take my rover and we're going to come over to this base pole. And we're going to measure it in as a new control point. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken my R780 and I've spun it down on and I've ran it down all the way to the bottom. Sometimes you may need to put a nut on there to close up any threads that you may have. What I'm going to do is hit measure to stop from staking that control point 102 over there. And right here, what we're going to do is measure in a new control point so that I can move the base over to right here. So in your menu, go to menu, and under the measured option right there, there's measure control point. So if you hit control point and go in there, what it wants you to do is hit the enter button or the plus on the screen here. I'm going to call this SiteTech Base 2. And the reason I didn't leave spaces there is you only have 15 characters that you can fill out there. So you can give it a code if you want, but I'm going to leave it on point name and I'm going to hit accept. So right here, you got to pay attention to a lot of these settings. So bottom of quick release, I am going to use the bottom of my quick release because my R780 is sitting on that. So it's going to assume that 0 is the bottom right here, and that's what your base is going to be at. The next one here on your vertical height, a lot of time you're going to have 6.562 in there, which is this pole height. You don't want to assign that base to any elevation here. You want to leave that at 0. So you type in 0 into that vertical height right there, and then you can leave it at 15 seconds for measure unless you wanted to go a little bit longer, and it'll go ahead and count up here from 0 to 15, giving us the current precisions. Once that point is shot in, you can see here that I've on the screen got point 102, and then I've got SiteTech base, which is currently where the base is at, but I need to move it over here to SiteTech base 2. So just remember when you do this that you have to do it if while the base is still currently running in a good known control point or base position for the job site in order to measure the new one. Once again, if the pole is bent and that pole can't be used for your base anymore, the base has to be set up on a actual control point out here to regain that position. So now you just go ahead and take off your receiver head after you've actually used it to measure in that control point. And then I'm going to go gather up the base and bring it over here, and I'm going to set the base on it. All right, so now that the base has been moved from that pole to the pole that I just measured with my rover, once that's coming on, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect from my current rover head. I'm going to go ahead and do connect device, and then it'll say, do you want to stop the current connection? I say yes. Now I can go back into GNSS, and I can start over my process here and go to the base. I can go to Bluetooth. If you don't have it in your list, go ahead and scan for it. Look at the number on the back. Mine is ends in 5538. So it shows up here as 5538. I'm going to go ahead and go OK. Basically what we're doing is now the base has to be told it's here, because a base doesn't know where it's at until you either finish a calibration or tell it where it's at. So we're assigning it to this position. One more thing to be aware of is if you have auto base enabled, you're going to need to make sure that this base pole is either more than 50 meters away from the original one, or you're going to have someone help you delete the app file out of this from that base location that was there. Because if you go to turn this on the next day, the auto base is going to try to auto base to any control points it's been to, and there's a chance it's going to auto base to that one. So be aware of the auto base. So either be far enough away from it, and it's not as good to just delete the control point on your data collector for auto base because the app file is stored on the base. That has to be deleted or it might get confused on which pole it's on. So once we're in here and I connect to it, I'm going to go ahead and assign the radio. I'm going to go radio and receiver, and I'm going to tell it what channel I want it to be on. I'm going to leave it on 23, and I'm going to go to control point now. This is where it asks, do you want to scan for that channel? I've already done that in this area. No one's running that channel. So right here it's asking, okay, base location. Do I have a lat long height or a base anywhere? Nope. I'm on a job site that has a control point. So I'm going to go control point. And on the screen here, I can pick SiteTech Base 2. You can either tap it on the screen or you can go to the menu here and select it through the menu. So we'll go ahead and tell it that, hit select. Now you got to be careful on what type of Zephyr you have, which is this top dish at the top. Yours says what it is on the bottom here. Sometimes that's screwed down and you can't see it. This one is a Zephyr 3 base. That's what I've got it on. Antenna height, you got to be really careful again here. This is screwed all the way down to the same height that my R780 was, and it's the bottom of this Zephyr, this white dish, is what it reads off of. So that's why I'm going to leave my vertical height at 0, because I had measured it at 0. We're going to hit accept. Elevation mask, not worried, and CMRX, because I've got newer Trimble gear, I'm going to leave it on that. So finishing up base location, you get this info panel that tells you where it's at, base. It's not a bad idea to take a picture of this or do a screenshot with your data collector, because it does have the lat and long for this base pole. In case your base gets stolen or you need to reassign it or your job site data collector is gone, there is the ability to key in lat and longs if you had to. So now that I'm done with the base, it disconnected from it. But what I always suggest to get the warm and fuzzies is that you hook back to your rover and go back and check that control point. Because now your rover is going to bounce off this base and you need to know if it's in the right position or not. So right now it's just one of those, I think things are good, but until you check into a couple control points or at least one, you're not sure if it's actually changed or not. Now, don't worry about new calibrations for machines or anything. We didn't make a new calibration. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my menu, project setup, and connect device, GPS, and I'm going to connect back to my base, my rover. But right here, you can see on connected to base, it still thinks that this is trying to connect to base where it was at before, which was SiteTech base. What I need to do is hit channel 23 again and force this to make the Bluetooth connection and then connect to the base where it's at so it gives out new base coordinates, base corrections. Once it does that, I hit 23 again, which is the channel I'm on, checking for corrections, and now you can see connected to base, SiteTech Base 2, because that's the name that it signed itself on that base position. Everything else is good here. I'm going to hit accept, then we're going to go check into that control point. Now that I'm back over here to this control point, I'm going to go ahead, and it says, do you want to check in? You can go ahead and do this system where it takes you to 3 control points. I'm going to just say no to that and show you just the quick way of setting back up on my hub, making sure my pole's nice and tight. And I'm going to level up, and I'm going to touch and hold on that control point, that 102, and I'm going to stake that point. And I'm going to center back up on it just like I did before, and we're going to see how close we are. So boom, right there, my fill is about the same 200ths. It was bouncing 2 or 3 before when we checked, and the horizontals are so close, it's awesome. But now I know that now that I'm hooked them up to the base pole that I moved, that I'm staking back into a known grid system for the job site, known northing, easting, and elevations for the job site. So that is the best way, or the only way really, to actually measure in a new control point is leave the base where it's at. I know I've said that a couple times, but we've got so many people that tear out the old pole and then go replant it and ask us, hey, how do I tell the base it's here? Well, that pole doesn't have a known control point to it until it's measured. That's why you use the rover head to measure the new one in. And then the other way to do it, not to repeat myself again, if that original base pole is messed up, we would go ahead and set this tripod up over this control point like so. This is what you would do if you actually had your base pole over there, the original one from the job site, get moved or bent, or it's not accurate anymore. You can't go measure a new control point off of a pole that's bent, or you're transferring that error with. So you would find any control point on the job site, set your tripod up over it. We would bring the base over, set it on here. You wouldn't measure this with your rover because this is already a known control point. The only difference here is we would actually tell it that I'm 1.8 meters above for the rover, or excuse me, the base. Then we would tell the base that it's here and go measure in a new control point and do the exact same process. So hopefully this helped. Thank you for watching this video from SiteTech Intermountain on measuring in a new base position and then telling the base that it's there and benching in.